Welcome to another episode of the On the Water podcast. I'm Jimmy Fee.
And I'm Kevin Blinkoff.
And this week, before we get into our guest, who is Garrett Weir, we're going to talk a little bit about picky stripers. Thank you to everybody who sent in some questions last week. Kevin's going to cover the first one.
All right, so our first question, let me just pull it up here. This is from Jonah in Falmouth. And Jonah says, "Hey guys, loving the podcast. I've got a question for you here. Was fishing the other day and saw some big stripers. Threw everything I had at them. All they would do was follow, but could not get one to hit. Meanwhile, a boat not too far from me had two teenagers there fishing what appeared to be live menhaden or bunker. They were bailing 40-inch stripers one after the other. How do I get these fish to hit something other than live bunker?" All right, well, thank you for your question, Jonah. And
Yeah, I've encountered that quite a few times where striped bass, especially this time of year when they're migrating, or maybe even in the middle of the summer, where you find them, you know there's stripers there, and they'll follow, but they won't quite commit. Kevin, I know you've been seeing some of that yourself lately.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different times that striped bass, really any fish, can be picky. But there seems to be this sort of particular scenario that we're seeing more and more often. And my theory is that with more bunker, pogies, menhaden, with more of these baits in the water, they're so preferred by striped bass. And when they're around, striped bass will feed on them and they'll ignore everything else. And then I also think there's a phenomenon where striped bass will feed on them to the point where they're full and then do this thing, and it's especially during the daytime, which I'll assume if Jonah said he could see another boat, that this was during the daytime, where they seem to be digesting. And it's an early season thing as well, I think, when the water's cold. And it's not just stripers. I think we see it with bluefish as well. During the middle of the day, they'll go to a shallow area. You can often see them, often just under the surface. And that's my theory, is they're digesting food. They're stuffed, they're full, they're not really active. If you put a live bunker in front of them, you can get them to eat it because, hey, what's one more? And plus, if you've got it on a hook, it's swimming funny, it's easy prey. But getting them to eat anything else seems almost impossible at times.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. They're kind of staging, relaxing, digesting, because when you find them in these areas, they're kind of featureless. There's not a ton of structure. There's not a lot of current. It's a place where often it's a sheltered area, where I've encountered it at least, and they are just like, they're safe there. The water's warm, and I think they go elsewhere to feed, because I've gone to these areas where I've seen them during the day, where you'll be spooking them, in the kayak particularly. I'll be kayaking out and spooking big stripers left and right, and then I go back to those areas at night with really high hopes, and they don't seem to be there.
Definitely. I ran into a situation just last week. I went out in the kayak and I was expecting to find some schoolie stripers. Brought an 8-weight fly rod, some smaller flies, and just kind of pedaling my way around a harbor. Tried some areas, some deeper areas that I thought might hold some schoolies. Wasn't finding anything. And on the way back into the launch, going through an area that was, really boat moorings, kind of the back of the harbor, all of a sudden I spooked some really large fish that were just sitting just under the surface. And they were in bunches of 3 or 4 fish. And, and these were some fish from 30-inch fish up to 40-inch plus fish, big striped bass, especially for the back of a harbor like that. They were interested. I tried the biggest fly I had with me, threw that, and they would follow it. They would kind of show interest, but they wouldn't eat it. The smaller fish would. So an 18-inch fish will pop up and eat at the fly.
It always seems to be the case.
Yeah, but the bigger fish just weren't, could not fool them. Now, this whole bunker phenomenon aside, there's a lot of reasons you can run into finicky stripers, that for whatever reason you're trying to get fish to eat. Stripers, usually pretty cooperative, but there are times that it's tough to get them to hit a lure. What are your kind of go-to lures, or what is your go-to reaction in that situation when you know there are stripers around, but they don't seem to want to hit?
So in that situation, I think a lot of times you can get a reaction strike, where if you can almost like you shock them into eating it, something that's big and loud, like a topwater, like the dock. But even that, they get conditioned to it. And I think they're seeing the dock a lot more these days than they were 10 years ago.
Right, that's become a really popular topwater lure.
Yeah, back when it was just the worst kept secret, they seemed like they really would eat that all the time. They'd get mad at it. Now, I think I would go with a big soft plastic, like a big weightless soft plastic, and work that really quickly with a lot of rod action and try to get that really almost skipping, maybe walking the dog under the surface, and that might get a reaction strike. But trying fast retrieves, loud colors, and and going that route, I think.
Yeah, I really think there's something to that kind of walk the dog action, that type of top water stick bait. It seems to have an action that no matter what gets fish to react. That's something that really works well. And it's go for the extremes too. There are times that if you work it faster and you make it look like it's fleeing, you can kind of get the fish excited and they want to eat. And then there's other times where let it sit and all of a sudden that will get the fish to strike. So it's kind of those, try out the two extremes and see what works. And then I also do agree with you, a big soft plastic or a soft plastic in general. There are times that, a traditional kind of a hard bait, something that would fish and work really well when the fish are actively feeding or work well at night or something like that, won't work. But a soft plastic just has a more lifelike action, and the more lifelike, sometimes that's the way to go.
I think you're playing to their instinct to give chase with something like that. Like that is an erratic, clearly a wounded and panicked bait fish, and I think it just triggers something in them instinctually that makes them chase it, as opposed to, like you said, something like a paddle tail or a minnow plug or something that has a more, almost a natural action that if they were feeding and in a feeding mode, that's great. But if they're kind of laid up, not really eating, then you want to get them excited, almost get them mad at it and chasing it.
Right. I think competition's another part of this too. If you can get multiple fish to join in, so if you can throw a lure out like a topwater, I've definitely seen this. I've seen this with flies. Doing a fast retrieve, that fish now has to give chase. All of a sudden, you'll see another fish say, "Hey, what's that fish going after?" Multiple fish join in, and as soon as there's competition, it's, "Hey, if I don't take a swing at this thing, that guy's going to get it." And that's
it's relatable.
Exactly. That's you at the barbecue buffet line, but. That fish is thinking to survive, I need to eat. And if I don't take advantage right now, then my competition here is going to eat it.
So we got another question about picky stripers this week as well. And this was a different situation. Fish that were actively feeding, but the listener who wrote in, John, had a tough time getting them to hit. And this was a unique situation that I know I look forward to every year. It's the cinder worm. A lot of people call it the hatch. It's actually a spawn. But John wrote in. He said, "A question for you guys. I've been down on my dock every night, and I'll see the worm hatch. The fish are breaking everywhere, eating these worms, and I can't get them to eat anything." And the worm hatch, we're going to call it the worm hatch, even though the worms aren't technically hatching. They're actually reproducing. And it's not the whole worm that comes up to the surface. It's just the reproductive organs that they kind of release and set adrift. But
yeah, and as just an aside, if you've never experienced a worm's spawn, which is what it really is, it is such a weird and cool looking thing, and there's nothing else like it. To see all these what look like pieces of worms undulating and zipping around, they move kind of unlike anything else. They move in straight lines, circles. They just kind of move weird as they do this dance and create more worms.
There's nothing you can do with a rod and reel that's going to make your lure spiral the way these things move.
No, it's the hardest thing to imitate.
But you can get them to hit. The first step is really choosing a little lure or bait that looks like these worms. They're small, 2 to 3 inches long. They tend to be pinkish to brownish. A lot of times they have a dark tip, which is why they call them the cinder worms. They have that dark edge, looks like it's been burnt.
What's maddening about it is what was described there. This is a point where the fish are eating, and so it's not like the fish are just sitting there and you're frustrated wondering how to get them to be active. They're actively eating all around you. There's swirls, there's splashes. You're watching these fish, and you're watching them often. At least from my experience, I'll put a fly out there that all winter long I'm tying flies, and I think this cinderworm fly, this looks exactly like what. This is going to work. This is going to be great. And then I get in that situation during the hatch. My fly is sitting there, and I'm watching fish eat real worms on either side of it because there's so much bait in the water usually when these happen.
That's the other thing, is there's so much competition with natural bait for your lures in those situations that that's a part of it too. The fish might not just be seeing it. There's on a good worm hatch, good worm spawn, there's thousands of them on the surface.
Right. And so sometimes some of the things I've found, and I've had a lot of experience fishing these events. I love doing it. I love tying flies for it. I love trying to figure it out. I like the fact, I guess, that it's frustrating. It's a great early season thing to see this many fish and see them feeding. So in my experience, what I found is a lot of times being there at the very start of the hatch before there's too much bait in the water, toward the end when there's less bait, and then as far as the lures themselves go, again, it's that sort of either you try and match the bait perfectly and really fool the fish, or sometimes it's doing something a little different. I've seen people who throw poppers during a worm hatch and will get a fish to strike. I mean, you get to a point, sometimes you get frustrated, you'll throw anything. This year, I saw one of the best, the most effective things I saw was I was fishing a fly on a fly rod, not doing well. Gave the fly to our coworker, Andrew, and he was fishing it on a spinning rod with a float ahead of it. And he was basically able to just let it sit almost in place and then just give it like the tiniest twitches. So this fly was something I really couldn't do with my fly rod unless I'd had a floating line and sort of been prepared for this. But he was able to let that fly just kind of sit in place and barely just twitch. And eventually it would get to be too much for a striper to handle. They'd come up and eat that thing. So I watched him outfish me with the spinning gear and doing that. But really, there were some nights that just, for whatever reason, no matter what I did, I could not fool a single fish. And this is with actively feeding fish all around. So the worm hatch is one of those things you just, the fun of it is kind of getting frustrated sometimes, trying to figure it out. And I think there are times it's just the conditions are better, the fish feed a little more, they're willing to hit your lure, and you, at that moment, you get that satisfaction of feeling like, hey, I cracked the code, I figured it out.
Yeah, one last tip on the worm spawns is, and this is actually appeared in an article that's on onthewater.com right now, is instead of, you want to cast, you see all these fish breaking, and so you want to always keep your line or your lure in the water, but instead choosing some targets, trying to anticipate seeing a fish rise to a worm, and then trying to anticipate where that fish is headed and putting your lure or fly in front of that fish. So you're choosing your targets there, and that's a way to try to get your lure seen with so much other competition for it.
And that's another way you can get the reaction strike. One thing I noticed this spring is there were times that I thought like, oh, there's 4 fish feeding, because I would see the rises and the swirls. But when I was actually watching from a high point, I had polarized glasses on, I could see it was one fish that was just swimming, and it would just eat a worm to the left. And then all of a sudden it would go to the right, eat a worm there, eat a worm there. And it was happening so fast, it looked like multiple fish, but it was really just one. And if you could get ahead of it, land the fly, and it would make a splash, the ripples, that's going to, that's something different. The fish all of a sudden gets its attention, turns that direction. And if you can get that kind of reaction strike of there's something right there, I'm going to turn towards it, I'm going to eat it, that worked maybe 1 or 2 times.
Yeah. Just enough. So before we kick it over to Garrett, there's one other comment I would like to address. This was in response to our second episode with Andy Nabreski. A listener wrote in on our website. Kevin, would you like to read this comment, or should I read it?
Go ahead, Jimmy. I'll let you read this one. And who's this from?
This is from MB. We just got some initials here. And this individual wrote, enjoyed your Living Off the Land and Sea podcast until you guys began getting dopey toward the end when y'all decided to gang up and denigrate the possum. A plump specimen captured in the fall, September to November, that has been feasting on wild grapes and other wild berries, fruits, and nuts is delicious. All white meat with the taste and texture of young pork. The possum, just like the pig that y'all mentioned butchering in the podcast, and probably people too, parentheses, long pork, are opportunistic scavengers. If your diet is garbage carrion, you will taste like garbage and carrion. You are what you eat. This autumn, find yourself a fat possum. You can easily outrun them, grab them by the tail, give a shake or two, and they'll usually play dead. Throw the possum in a sack, and you got yourself some good eating. When dressing your possum, just like you would any small game, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel, just be careful skinning out the critter that you don't cut or puncture the 2 anal glands at the base of the tail. Usually they pull off with the hide and you won't see them. Puncture them and they'll taint the meat, so be careful. Bon appetit.
That's easily one of the top 3 comments in my 16 plus years at On the Water that we've received in response to anything we've put out. When I first saw that comment come in, I started reading and thought this was going to be a joke. And then as I read it and heard all the details, I realized this person is absolutely serious. And actually, I think it's a good point. As we talked, I mean, you talk about the things that Andy Nabreski, our Living Off the Land and the Sea expert, the things that he'll eat, including squirrels. He's had no problem. He eats squirrels. Why not eat possum? And, we see possums eating, in and around garbage. I don't know if they actually eat, they're not like raccoons. So perhaps this is a great point. Perhaps possum is delicious. I personally not going to try it, but
I would try anything once. I would.
it's true.
I just ate the swim bladder of a black drum on the recommendation of Captain Bob Cope. We were down in Cape May. We caught a black drum. He said, eat the swim bladder. It tastes like London broil. It's been a while since I had a London broil. I don't remember it tasting like that, but it wasn't bad. But back to the possum. Perhaps the worst thing that poacher did was not wait until fall when it was fattened up on nuts and berries. Instead, it was eating the entrails of his undersized striped bass.
One thing we need to ask all of our listeners out there, if you have eaten possum, let us know. Is this true? Is it delicious? Is it pork-like in quality? To me, I mean, if it's been eating nuts and berries, and it could be delicious.
Yeah.
And if you've eaten long pork, which we've now learned is a way of describing human meat, definitely don't tell us. Just keep that to yourself.
Well, anyhow, I had a great conversation with Garrett Weir. We're going to get to that right now. He founded a community called PhishPhinders, and that is it's a way of getting a lot of people out on the water. He runs party boat trips and private boat trips, and we're going to hear from him now.
And if you have any questions for us that you want us to answer on the podcast, please send them to us. Email feedback@onthewater.com. You can type that up in an email or record it in a voice message, and we'll play your voice message here on the podcast. Thank you.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the On the Water Fishing Podcast. Today, our guest is Garrett Weir, founder of PhishPhinders. And, man, I got to think you were the most well-traveled tog fisherman there is. In a given season, you go from Maryland, you target them in Maryland waters, Virginia waters, all the way up to Rhode Island and Massachusetts. I don't know anybody else that puts that many miles on their truck chasing tog.
Yeah, we do. Not just tog, fluke. I mean, so indicative with the name PhishPhinders, finding the fish. That's the idea. The idea is not all the time you have in your backyard all the trophy catches that you can, that you can have. So the idea of going out and finding fish, and I just put a cool little twist to it, and it's my baby. It's what I've put together. I love the following, and I've built a tremendously large and tight-knit community of fishermen.
Oh, it's been great to watch. I remember PhishPhinders first popped up on my radar, and I think it was one of your trips to Maryland where you had at least one fish over 20 pounds. Maybe were there two? Was there a trip where you guys caught two?
Yeah, there were two. So funny enough, I was in class getting my captain's license, and my uncle's gonna laugh at this. I gave him my spot. So the guys go out. It was a good bite, and Jonathan caught a 20-pounder first. I think they said 20 minutes of the trip. He had another big fish pinned on a gunnel, they say. The guy's being dramatic, and unfortunately, the fish spit the hook. And then, a prideful moment for, our circle and for me, because it's my uncle who's a close, not only a close friend of mine, but uncle in blood. But we fished together so much, and we've spent so many hours. Literally, we have these things called that I piss poor preparation produces piss poor performance. We prepare and talk about fishing so much, so to see him go. And that day where it's kind of like it was written, as they say. He took my spot. I couldn't be there. Went out and got the 20. Which is kind of like it's the apex of our small tog fishery, right? To 20 pounders are sought after. It's what everybody wants to get. That's the number that you want to attain to kind of have greatness. So it was two of them caught.
I think for tog, like a 20-pound tog is probably the equivalent of like a 60-pound striper. Like a 50-pound striper, they are way more common than 20-pound tog. So it's got to be 60-pound bass. Is the equivalent of that is a 20-pound tog.
I agree with that.
See
100%.
two on one trip. I mean, most guys won't see one in a lifetime.
It's insane. It's definitely insane.
But backing up, man, you've been fishing your whole life. You're from Long Island. You're up here actually to tog fish with Captain BJ Sylvia, who's a good friend of ours here.
Yeah.
And when did you start fishing?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, actually. I recently, well, almost 8 years now, moved to Long Island. Uh, Grew up in Brooklyn, grew up in East New York, Brooklyn. And what people don't realize about the city is we have a tremendous saltwater landscape. People think the city and they think, concrete jungle, the Big Apple, the hustle and bustle of Manhattan. But in actuality, even Manhattan is an island. Long Island is an island, Staten Island. So we have all these monastery places where they're close to the water, but also we're surrounded by some of the best saltwater surf fishing in the country, to say the least.
Without question, man. If you gave me a time machine and I could go back 500 years and fish anywhere, I'm going to Manhattan. You've got the Hudson River there, the Raritan Bay, and there used to be all these oyster reefs that they had to demolish to create the shipping lanes. The fishing there is so good now. I mean, the Raritan's fishing great. I can't imagine what that was like hundreds of years ago, before.
Absolutely.
But even now, like you said, it's the fishing's held
And
on.
and you really don't need a boat because there's so much ideal spots where you can fish off the bay. Obviously, surf fishing has become, tremendously popular around the country, especially in New York proper. But just land-based fishing, like you mentioned, the Hudson, as you go north, all those areas where you can find anywhere near, rocks, land, not reefs, but if you find some jetties, there's plenty of jetties. So no, but the fishing is tremendous. But getting back to my fishing, I've been fishing all my life. My family, we're Costa Rican and Honduran. My dad was a huge fisherman in Honduras, and it's something that he just taught me and my siblings growing up. I remember baseball and fishing. That was what my family, credo was. My dad played softball at a very high level. He's a now retired union electrician, Local 3, for all the guys out there. A lot of fishermen, Local 3 guys. IBU, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And I remember him picking me up from work. After work, picking me up from school, picking my siblings up. And we would go to the bridge to go fish, Cross Bay Bridge. We would go to, Marine Parkway Bridge, Canarsie Pier, and that's what we did. There was a family thing. My mom was a nurse, so she would work sometimes in the evening. So that's what we did, and it was a family thing that I kind of just kind of ran with, and now it's become my true passion.
That's right. So you mentioned baseball. It's funny, man. I know a lot of baseball players very passionate about fishing. Like I don't know if you ever remember AOL Instant Messenger?
Yeah, of course.
My handle on that was Fee FNB, Fee Fishing and Baseball. Like I grew up, I never played at the level, so I never played past high school. But I'd like to think I was pretty good in high school. I was all city in Philadelphia, never played in college, but all city backup, not first team. So I'd like to sneak that in there where I can. You played college baseball. You even played pro baseball, right?
Yeah, I did. So I played locally in high school at Canarsie High School, the great Canarsie High School under Bobby Napo. I was lucky enough to receive a scholarship to play in the Big East at Seton Hall University, the Pirates. I finished up my undergrad and my collegiate baseball career at Delaware State, HBCU, historically black college, which is my true alma mater. I love that place. It matured me. It taught me. It literally molded me to the man that I am today. Because of the success that I had at Delaware State University, it allowed me to play professional baseball. And I was up here in the Cape area playing professional baseball.
Did you play in the Cape League?
I did play in the Cape League.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love going to those games.
Yeah. I played in the Cape. I was replacement in the Cape for about 2 weeks, and it was a great It was a great experience, something I'll never forget. I played in several other collegiate baseball leagues around the country. The Cape is known here in the Northeast because of the popularity, but there are a couple others around the country that are just as popular. But playing in the Cape is something that I really remember. I think back on it was a prestigious summer, that summer playing in the Cape.
That's awesome.
But
what was your position? So
I played center field and hit leadoff pretty much every level, high school, college, and professional baseball. It was I was a speed guy. Didn't hit many home runs. High school I did, but then when you get to college, the game changes. So college and pro ball, I was a speed guy. Stole a lot of bases. I believe I still have the record for stolen bases. Just 2 years at Delaware State, I still have the record for career stolen bases. Same in high school. But yeah, I mean, baseball was, I'm a baseball guy. I believe a lot of baseball players just happen to kind of just find fishing, and we just kind of, we belong, right? I was lucky enough to grow up playing baseball and grow up fishing. A lot of guys just find it. I remember on the off time in college, I would travel with a rod in my bag. Literally, I would have a 5-foot 2-piece or a 6-foot 2-piece rod in my baseball bag, and I would find wherever we played, South Carolina, upstate New York, just find any body of water, salt water, fresh water, and go fish it. And that was the thing to do,
I mean, baseball's so analytical, fishing's so analytical. Like, there's a lot of parallels there. There's a lot of strategy, a lot of preparation that goes into both of those, man. I 100% agree with that.
Absolutely. It's a mental game, right? Baseball's a mental game. They say 90% mental, 10% physical. Same thing with fishing, right? You go out fishing, you may go and smash them one day. The next 20 times you may go out, you may not even get a bite. Obviously, you never want that to happen, but it's very mental. Getting back to what I was saying before, piss poor preparation produces piss poor performance. All of those things, they tie in. There's tremendous parallels between the two. You in sports, in baseball, you prepare to perform. Same thing with fishing, right? Us fishermen who take it extremely seriously. You go in our living rooms, our man caves, and you see gear everywhere because we're preparing for battle. So it's something that we do, and we take it extremely serious. And we want to succeed. We want to catch those big fish. You want to catch a trophy fish. You come into my man cave. I have my trophy tog that I caught in my backyard of Long Island too, which means a lot to me. Fish pushing 17 pounds in Long Island, which is not a common catch.
Oh no,
guys catch those, in the Jersey, South Jerseys, and the Marylands, Virginias, now appear in Rhode Island. But to catch that fish in Long Island is a pretty big deal. And I have my my personal best fluke, which is 13.6 in my man cave as well. So
where was that? Where was
that
the
was
fluke
caught
from?
up here in the Cape.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Nantucket, not the Cape. Yeah.
Oh man, that's there's something about catching in your home waters too. Like I get that. Like you go to Nantucket Shoals, you catch a 10-pound fluke there, catching one in like, dude, how am I not remembering the channel? What's the channel in Raritan where everybody fluke fishes? Kids with an A.
Ambrose.
Yes, catching one there would be a little bit more meaningful. But still, like something about home waters. A 17-pound fluke or tog in Long Island.
Absolutely,
it's pretty wild. It's not Cape May.
It really is. I brag about it. My guys say, "Oh, they have 20s." I don't have a 20 yet, but it's okay. It's okay because that fish means a lot to me. Hence why it was on my mom's birthday, which means a lot to me as well. So that fish kind of propulsed. Literally, I said, this is where PhishPhinders is going to start because of that fish. And I say that because I remember being on a pursuit, and I would look at my schedule for work. I'm a medical device consultant by trade. I would make sure I didn't have surgery that day or that, early in the week, and I would set my schedule, and I'm gone. 4 a.m, gone. I'm driving wherever it is, and a lot of party boat fishing. Not until recently did I have my boat, so I do a lot of fishing on my boat now. But to get the trophy, sometimes if they're not in your backyard, either you trailer your boat, which could be a little bit cumbersome at times, or you just go on party boat fishing. But the party boat culture is strong, and it's not easy. A lot of guys don't realize the party boat fishing is tough, and that's what brings guys like me out to for that. Again, I'm taking this. You mix it up every now and then. You do some boat fishing on your own boat. You do some 6-pack fishing. But the party boat fishing is a culture that is strong, and it's important to cut your teeth and understand how it works and the camaraderie you build with guys when you're party boat fishing. And to catch a trophy fish on a party boat's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is, I grew up, I never had a boat, always hopped on party boats. I'd fish around South Jersey. And I started where I think a lot of people, what might start people on party boats and kind of give them a bad idea of it was just like the tourist half-day trip. And that's where it's Tangle City. But you identify the right trips and the right ports on the right boats, and it's a completely different, it's not somebody who's fishing for the first time in their entire life. It's somebody who's out there and, we saw some of the crews on the boats we fished last season when we filmed At the Rail, which was a video series we did for On the Water.
That was a great series, by the way. I love it. I watch it all the time.
Oh, hey,
We have to do it at the rail with the PhishPhinders collaboration. I love that show.
We've talked about that, man. Absolutely. I think that might be coming. We did get approval for At the Rail season 2, so I don't know how much I can talk about that yet. But yeah, but you see, there's guys on there, and they're looking for their personal best fluke. They're looking for their biggest ever tog, and it's not just somebody who's going to sit there and let the rig tangle the whole boat. It's something that, unless you're really into it, it's tough to explain. But that's what we're trying to show with At the Rail, and so is that where PhishPhinders, the idea, the inspiration for that came from, was from the party boat community?
So with
initially,
PhishPhinders, so funny enough, I've had PhishPhinders in my heart for quite some time. I remember in college saying, I want to have a fishing company. Just didn't know what I wanted to do in the fishing space. If I had to kind of pinpoint where I got the ball rolling, when I first got home from playing professional baseball in 06 or 07, I didn't have any fishing buddies. My dad was kind of like my only one. I was gone for so long in college and playing pro ball. And then getting back home and starting my professional career and trying to figure things out in the big city of New York, trying to find lucrative earning and try to make a name for myself.
I'm sorry, man.
So
I should know way better.
No worries. I put mine on a mute right before too. I'm glad I did. So that's where the idea of it came about. I said, when I get back home, let me start I never wanted to be a club, and the reason why I said never wanted to be a club, because I didn't want guys to feel obligated. I wanted to be very organic, and guys should just come out as they feel. And I've always said I wanted to create a community, and that word community means a lot to me because, so I'm a minority that grew up in a place like Brooklyn. I didn't see many of me fishing on television. So I've always wanted to create that. And I was lucky enough over the last couple years in some of the notoriety in winning my boat in the large contest that I had. I've successfully won contests recently, tournaments. Fluke Till You Puke years ago. We won.
Did you win Fluke Till You Puke? We were just talking about that with Captain Rob Taylor, man.
The team that we fished, I was with Robbie Taylor.
Oh, yeah?
So the team that we fished with, and I want to say with COVID, I feel like those 2 years of COVID I feel like things that happened prior to COVID are 10 years ago now. But right before COVID, we won Fluke Till You Puke with Captain Robbie Taylor, captaining the boat. We were one of the only boats that took the run to Nantucket Shoals and got lucky, and we kind of had the cheat code, and we hit him right away. It's a very small window in that tournament, so it's hard to make that run.
That's an all-in strategy.
You only have 3 hours of fishing, but some of the notoriety building there, and I said, okay, well, this is what's gonna happen now. I'm gonna really build this and make it something, right? And that's why I have a social media presence. That's why I reached out to these companies. And no kudos to the companies for kind of seeing what I'm doing. The not-for-profit is huge for me because it's never been a profitable thing. I was lucky enough to have a successful career in medical device. We all could use more money, but that being said, it was never about the money and still is never about the money, right? I want to create something that I have an 8-year-old son, little Garrett, and also a 13-year-old Logan. I want them to be able to see me on television, others like themselves. I give a perfect example. There was a meet and greet several years ago with another company in the business where they asked me to come out and have a talk at the New York Boat Show for Steigercraft, which I own a 23-foot Steigercraft. And the amount of individuals, young kids from all backgrounds, races, that say, like, you're the coolest fisherman we know. We love watching you. We love hearing you talk. So it's not to be braggadocious or boisterous. It's the fact that that's how I feel, right? Like, fishing is a young man's game, and I'm getting older now, but, still being in my 30s, it's something that you want to make cool, and kids love cool shit. You know, it's simple as that. So can we say that?
Oh yeah, it's okay.
Okay,
It's fine.
good. So kids love. You know, I am a sailor, so kids love cool shit. And my son, little Garrett, who's, you know, I'm his hero. He says I'm his favorite baseball player. He's my favorite baseball player. You know, and I'm proud of him to the moon and back. He says, "Daddy, I love watching you in these podcasts, in these talks," and that's what kind of really gave me the momentum to say, this is what I want to do and really build it, right? It started as just, you know, not racial, not cultural, but creating just representation. And I use that representation very strongly because in this world of, you know, diversity and inclusion, it's important for everyone to kind of have their voice be seen and heard, especially seen. But as anything grows, you kind of have to make sure to encompass everything in diversity and inclusion, right? Because diversity is being diverse and including everyone, right? So once you kind of matriculate and understand that verbiage, it's important to say, I want everyone a part of this. So when you see a fish finder trip, there's no specific anything. There's women, there's men. We have high school kids sometimes that come and fish with us, as long as they don't have school and they're not, So my son will be out with me next week, and that's why it means a lot to me. It's going in a direction that I'm really happy with, and I really haven't even started yet. It's going to be even bigger than I know. It's going to be bigger than what I even dreamed about. Fortunately and unfortunately, everything takes time. So. And platforms like this is important because when people see it, they can understand it, and it's going to help it grow. So thank you for allowing me this platform to even, have this conversation and to be able to put it out there.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for coming. And dude, I think it's important, man. I got a chance to check out the PhishPhinders trip back in December, and one of the things that stuck out to me was the competitiveness. Like, you definitely carried that over from baseball, I'm sure, because there was no shortage of trash talking on there. And I mean, I don't think I did catch a keeper on that one. I managed to, but I heard about it until I did. So
no, we literally are as competitive as can be. It starts weeks before trips. I want to streamline things, so I take full responsibility for everything that we do. So literally I do all the booking. I have relationships with some of the best captains up and down the East Coast, which means a lot to me because a lot of people can't get those dates, right? Not everybody can call a Captain Kane and get a date, a Captain Dak and get a date, Captain BJ and get a date, Captain Robbie Taylor and get a date, and so on and so forth, right? And these guys, they're the kind of the grease that keeps the wheel spinning because we go to these guys and we're looking for memories, and also bringing people together. I always said, when you bring guys in your boat, you're not really fishing anymore. I'm working and I have a captain's license, and when I'm taking people out on charters or I'm doing charter cruises, I'm not having fun all the time. I'm now becoming the guy having to produce. So being able to go out on these trips and sit back and have a captain do it, and we just compete, it's important. The camaraderie is high, and it gets organic. We create these bonds that, I joke around with my guys and say sometimes in trips that are double days, you may spend more time with the fishermen than you spend with your family in that period of time. Traveling, fishing for a couple days, to travel back home if we're all together. We eat together, we break bread, we have beverages and libation. So all those things mean something. And that, again, getting back to the foundation of why I created PhishPhinders. It's my baby, it's my company, my LLC, and I wanted people to be able to come together, right? You came to our trip, and it was like you were a part of us for 10 years, right? Because we include everyone, and we don't want to keep anyone out because the inclusion is important.
Oh, absolutely, man. I met a lot of great people on that trip. I even met Philly Fishing Girl, who also, I believe she also went to Villanova as well, because I think we talked a little bit about that, and she has a YouTube channel. Yeah.
And she's really getting really good with her YouTube channel, and thankfully I connected with Kristen, and she's doing really nice videos now, and she's really expanding her wings and doing her own thing. So we love to see it. Love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun to follow her along on Instagram after meeting her on the trip. So Garrett, 17 is the high water mark for Tog. Local waters, you still want the 20 though.
I dream about the 20, but you know what? I think years ago it was something that I wanted more. I've had some amazing days. I think of a day where I had 7 over 10 and I had 4 over 15. So, you know, it's funny because you sit down with a guy who's a seasoned guy and he'll say to you, you know, anybody can do that when they go on these trips are on party boats with 20 plus anglers, and you're really competing against the guys. You say that, it's easy for a guy to say that, but a guy to your left or to your right may get 0, goose egged. So to have a day like that, it means a lot, right? Or the day that we had where Jonathan and Alonzo, had 20. So yeah, it'd be nice to meet that apex and get a 20, but I've kind of let it go. It'll happen when it happens. It'll be surprised. It might happen tomorrow with BJ. It'll happen when it happens. But I've been lucky enough to get those amazing days, and that's what it's about, right? That memory, to be able to sit down with your buddy and say, look at this. Like, look at that. Remember that day? I remember Casper, one of the guys that fishes with us a lot. He posted this year and reposted it and said, I remember that day. That was one of the most impressive fishing performances I've ever seen. You know how good that feels to have, one of your peers say that and say,
I don't personally, but definitely not Tog fishing.
It's definitely humbling, and thanks, Casper. I really appreciate it.
Party boat Tog fishing is every year consistently the hardest, most difficult fishing I do, because not only are you competing with the guys around you, but if somebody next to you completely doesn't know what they're doing, they can blow the fish out from that area too. Because I had a trip years ago on the Norma Cay where someone politely tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Stop bouncing your sinker in the rubble. You are blowing the fish out of here. They don't want anything to." Oh yeah.
Look at that. Yeah.
But in a nice way.
And it's true because you have these hardcore, old school guys that they believe in what they believe in. Obviously, we have a whole new arsenal now, right? With the light rods and the graphite and the jigs where, I'm not going to say a name, but recently we had this very heated, gentleman's argument. An old school guy who's a really good fisherman, very, very known, I won't say his name, he made a comment and said, jigs are easier than bait rods. I'm sorry, than bait fishing or rig fishing. And I said, most guys who jig, it's a fiddle factor, and it's taking them X amount of time to get acclimated to the jig bite. The jig bite's not easy. Once you get acclimated, it's like anything else, like tying your shoe. But it's a fiddle factor. There's times where the jig works well. There's times where the rig works well. Knowing which time is best is important as well, right? Because it's times where I may not put the jig down. It's times where I may not pick the jig up. So knowing your situation, your wind, your tide, whether they're being finicky or not, the baits you put in front of them, shallow water color with the jigs is important. Deep water, not so much. Shallow water color and size. All of these things are factors that separate the men from the boys, the guys who catch their fish and the guys who don't. And guys, when you're going out for Tog, throw them back. We don't need to clean the ocean. A lot of times we go out with trips, we have a self-imposed 2-man limit, whether even though a lot of these states, to be honest with you, I can't even tell you what the state's limits are because we never really follow them. We always 1 or 2 a man, and that's it, right? Let those fish grow. If they're able to grow, our kids will have them so they can have these conversations in 20 years about these world record Tog.
Yeah, and Tog fishing has become so popular, and they're seeing much more pressure than they saw, than they saw 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So and it's encouraging to see guys putting them back now, especially the bigger ones. If the fish looks good, it's going to survive. It's nice because they are slow growing. They are tough. Like, they're going to survive it. I mean, that fish is going to get caught again. And
some of the ages on these Tog, they're, you know, in their 20s, 30-year-old, like that. You know how long that is for a fish? You have guys catching fish that are as old as they are.
Oh, yeah.
It's you know what, that's impressive, you know. And obviously the fish down, the more south you go, they grow at a faster rate than the fish up here. Size, that is. Even they may grow, they may get bigger because they have more time not being
Yeah, it's a longer growing season.
a longer growing
I think
season.
Tom Daffin was kind of explaining that to me.
Yes.
It's like down here off Cape May, like the water's warmer for longer, so these fish are eating and they're growing.
They're not dormant as long.
Yeah.
You know, up here they have a long dormant time. Except for this year, these fish are out chewing right now.
Big ones too. I've heard of so many big fish in Buzzards Bay already, and usually we don't get the big fish in Buzzards Bay quite so often. Like it seems like they hit Newport, and that's where the 10-pound togs stop and the just barely keepers begin, which is where I fish in Buzzards Bay. But yeah, this year, man, there's been some very big
Driving
tog
up
caught.
here, I saw a lot of guys kind of posted up. Looked like they were tog fishing because I don't think the bass were up here yet. So the guys were on the rocks. I believe they were tog fishing because again, I don't think there's anything else to fish for.
So Adam, who's behind the camera there, he has a little tog jetty not far from the office. He runs there at lunch and catches the couple. Yeah, so he goes at lunch, catches his dinner. Although not yet. We caught a couple females this year, keeper size, but this time they've got their eggs in them in the springtime. So it's better if we got a nice size male, keep that. But so how does I've tog fished from Cape May to Massachusetts. I've never gone south of there. How does the Maryland, Virginia tog fishing differ from, say, northern New Jersey?
So like anything else, right? It's when you first do it, it's a wow factor. So I'll say this disclaimer: if you're given the opportunity to fish any of these places, it's special, right? Up, Rhode Island, Newport area, Cape May, Virginia, or Ocean City. They're all special in their own way. The bite's different. When they're chewing, It's when they're being togged and you have to actually be skilled to catch them. That's when you see and understand everybody has their tricks. And how they differ is it's just a matter of sometimes you go to these places and you think in your mind, I just saw this magazine where this guy had the world record tog, or these guys from PhishPhinders had 2 20-pounders. And you think at any given time, or that trip, you're going to get a 20-pounder, right? That's not realistic. You want to have a game plan. Again, piss poor preparation produces piss poor performance. Have a game plan. I always say, whatever fishing you're doing, make sure that you understand what you're doing and continuously do it repetitively over and over again. If you're bucktailing for fluke, understand the cadence and what you want to do. Understand how long you want your top shot, where you want that teaser hook sitting, and keep the cadence. Don't get too far in your angle and do it. Same thing with togging. Understand what you want to do. If you're a flat sinker guy and you're a flat line guy, be that over and over again. If you're a jig guy, if you go back and forth, understand the tides. So all of these things, first, you want to make sure you understand and you put them into play. Once you have that going, now it's just make sure that, take advantage of opportunities. You may have little opportunity and you don't want to miss those opportunities. You don't want to miss a bite, let him eat, or not let him eat. However you want to go about it. I'm not going to sit here and give a tutorial on how guys should catch them. Some guys swing, some guys don't. But just understand that these places, they're all special. At any given time, the special one could come up because the world record is going to be broken. When, we don't know, but it'll be broken. I don't think it's going to be a situation where it's continuously broken. The next one is going to hold for a while. And a lot of us believe that and understand that. It's going to be special to see. I believe one was caught up here last year. A kid from Jersey caught the state record in Rhode Island.
Yeah, 17-year-old kid caught a. What was the size? It was in the 20s, mid to low 20s.
I believe 23. I believe the fish was, or 22 or 23.
And that was the new state record. And there were some other 20s caught, man, and released, that's what's going to grow that next state record.
A couple years ago in New York, a 25 was caught, and that was a state record in New York. Again, just a strange small wreck. Caught on a green crab, and a lot of us use white crabs. I have a bushel of white crabs in my trunk right now that I'm taking fishing with me tomorrow. We travel everywhere with our white crabs. But just these places that you fish, they differ because just understanding the bite, understanding how to target them, whether you're going small baits, large baits, deep water, shallow water, and it's understanding that. Be versatile. Fishing in maybe Virginia or Maryland is sometimes a deeper fishing game.
Is it similar to Cape May? I've done Cape May 2 times, where it's like one time was good, the other time was like we caught 2 fish.
So there are times they're all kind of the same in regards to there's never a home run, right? Everyone thinks the world record holder Captain Kane. I've had days that we dream about, that I still dream about, and I've had days where you go, wow, like they keep you honest and they humble you, and that's the game. And that's what keeps us coming back. It's not us catching that big one. It's us wanting to catch the big one, but being humbled every once in a while, but then getting over it and having that big day. Tog fishing is tog fishing. It's not blue fishing. Just as you have your difficult days when you're trying to figure out the line siders and the rockfish, as they call them down south, but we call them striped bass. We have our tough days. Same thing with tog. You have to figure them out. Getting back to those different areas, at any given time, some special could come up. But the difference is, I believe, it's just understanding the bite. And everybody says that. They bite differently in Central Jersey than they bite in South Jersey. They bite differently in New York. New York, there's not a lot of fish in New York because the commercial guys clean them out. So, you're not going to go and get this ferocious bite that you normally get. So you really have to be skilled to get them in Brooklyn, to get them in Long Island, to get them in these places.
There's so much pressure, especially on those North Jersey reefs. Those fish hit minimum size and they get caught once after that.
Absolutely.
It's just because there's the volume of angling. I'm not faulting anybody for keeping a keeper tog. I do it. But there's so many more fishermen out there targeting them that it's more likely that fish is going to get scooped up before it reaches a good size.
The bigger the season we have, the more pressure that fish gets, right? Them opening the New York spring season kind of sucked. When I say suck, I don't mean that extremely negative, but now those fish don't have that period of time from being dormant. Now they're being, targeted, as opposed to years ago, we didn't have a spring season in New York. So X amount of thousands of fishermen weren't targeting them and weren't pounding those sinkers, as we stated before. They weren't anchoring on those wrecks or spot locking on those fish, right? And they're right on them. So now that's a big game changer as well. The spot lock kind of change. I have a spot lock on my boat.
It's opened up so many small areas that you could not double.
Absolutely.
You'd need to be really skilled to double anchor over some of the areas where guys are finding monster tog now.
I can't anchor well. I can spot lock extremely well. with a remote control in my hand, with my kids with me, so I'm not pulling an anchor, killing myself, and it helps for a guy like me taking my kids out and being able to get over structure and just get them a couple of fish and them to have fun. So I'm happy to be able to do that. But then the guys, they get really, really good with it. Like the Team El Nino guys. Those guys, Ron and Nino, they're really good at spot locking. And they've taken it to the next level. BJ, and not only with Tog, with Fluke. So it could be a positive. But getting back, the point here is, it's really allowed you to target those fish, and we have to make sure something has to be done, whether it be making it a moratorium, which I don't know if that's the best thing, maybe one fish per person, but implementing something will even things out. Because what we don't want to do, and I remember as a kid, we never had a situation where tog were in trouble. They're in trouble now, but there was a moratorium on striped bass. They didn't even want you targeting them. And I remember that in the early 90s, going to spots we used to fish as a kid and not being able to fish them, or we still went and fished them and we caught them, we had to throw them back. And, it kind of changes how you grow up as a kid, and that fish, that's kind of like the staple for what what you're targeting. So to prevent that from happening, hopefully we can implement something that kind of starts to protect the dog. Not only guys saying throw them back, but also just put something in play where we're targeting them more than ever now. They're more fun. They're one of the most popular fish in our waters to catch. So let's protect it so they're here in 20 to 50 years.
Yeah. Not only more people are doing it, we've become more effective at it thanks to spot lock, thanks to the braided line, things like that. And it's it's a tough balance to strike because you want the access to the fishery. Like, you don't want it to be taken away entirely. Like, you want to be able to tog fish. You want to be able to striper fish. But at the same time, you don't want us to love them to death, you know. So, I mean, and that begins, you know, fisheries management is such a complex process. It begins with the anglers. You know, we're the boots on the ground. We're the stewards of the resource. So if it begins with influential anglers like yourself releasing these fish, people start to catch on, and that's where it begins. And then you see Rhode Island just passed new regulations where they are a little bit more restrictive. You know, nothing was saying they had to do that.
Good job
but
by
the,
Rhode
the
Island.
captains
Very good
pushed
job.
that through. And
And a couple years ago, Massachusetts did it. I'm happy about that as well. New York has put some things in place. But again, you know, the length of season, not happy with Jersey, where they have them pretty much all year. And then that one fish, because those guys are still anchoring up on those wrecks. So things like that, right? Because now guys will go out and they're always give those fish that pressure as opposed to them just being left alone. And that you know, leave them alone conversation is a big deal, because that leaving them alone allows them to grow, allows them to congregate, you know, whatever verbiage you want to apply to it. And that's how we get that fishery back, right? These hot spots aren't hot spots anymore. Only thing you need is one guy seeing one boat, and that spot's out there. Simple as that now.
yeah, no, it's true. And you can spin up the radar and see, okay, this guy's anchored here, this guy's anchored here.
I
Put
catch
that
one
right here.
fish in whatever little small hole I have. Guys know my boat, so as soon as they see me with a rod bent, they come right behind me, and they're spot locking right behind me. So that's how it kind of goes. So that's the game now.
I did have another question about Maryland, Virginia. Do they really use blue crabs for bait down there?
So I've seen it. I've seen everything. I've seen guys using cooked shrimp, not non-cooked shrimp.
Wait, cooked
I've
shrimp?
seen cooked shrimp because it stays on the hook better.
Okay.
Yep. I've seen guys use lobster tail. You know, I remember the story my dad always tells me in Rhode Island that they used to walk the beach, grab a lobster, and they used to fish for striped bass with baited lobster tails.
At the bass clubs, like 100 years ago, they would chum with lobsters, then bait the hooks with lobster tails. And I don't know what they were eating for dinner. If they were chumming with all their lobster, but
So I mean, you hear that? I mean, when you catch all these sea bass are spitting up all these lobster all the time. So it's something that they're definitely eating. You know, our waters are being cleaned out. But yes, I've seen and heard it. But at the end of the day, the big bait, the bait that of choice is the white crab. Any tog fisherman that's really serious will tell you that we has his stories where guys are using green crabs, Asians, clam, whatever time of year. And the bite might be slow, might be fast. And once they want that white crab, that's it. And they start, I'm not going to say it shuts the bite down, because they're going to eat. But the white crab seems to always find, or a vast majority of the time, find the big fish. And
I mean, that 20
it finds it.
That 23 or 24 in Rhode Island, they brought the white crabs up, right? Is that I'm pretty sure that was the story.
A lot
there.
of us, when we travel, it's pretty much automatic. We bring our own bushel per day, you know, per 6-pack charter. We bring our bushels. You know, when we have these large trips, like say on the Island Current, which is a boat that we fish with, Captain Chris, we make sure we bring tons of white crabs, and that's the bait of choice. You know, it's affordable enough still. On a lot of these pieces, that's what you see. It's there, you know. It's the bait that's it's there pretty much year round. In the summertime, sometimes we catch fluke that are spitting up white crabs, right? So it's indigenous to that area, and once you start seeing that, and I don't think people realize how much white crabs are in these areas. There's much more white crab in the areas and on these spots, and fish eating white crabs than we think. White crab is a big bait.
I always understood like they were the ones that were actually on the wrecks. Like the green crabs are more of a coastal thing. They're in the marshes.
Green crabs in.
Yeah,
we brought
and
the green crabs in.
yeah, you don't see them quite in the deeper water. The white crabs, they're living out there.
Absolutely.
Man. And you see them in the canal. There's plenty of them around. Like when I'm striper fishing,
They're
you watch them
resident to
walk
those
around.
areas, to those wrecks. You know, again, of course the green. So with the question with the blue claw crabs, as you go south, Maryland's a popular thing because they're much more blue claws. it's hard to, it's not as easy to fish for them with the blue claws. Their shells are harder, so now you end up pretty much just fishing with the insides, right? And that's a skill within itself, is, you know, fishing with just the insides, peeling the top off. So with the white crab, however you do it, you know, whether you operate on the fish, as we call it, or you crack the shell, is you're simply putting hooks in them, and you can fish them normally. It's a little bit tougher fishing with the a popular crab as well as the Asian crab, but that's more for shallow waters, because a lot of those areas, you know, North Shore, Long Island Sound, you flip rocks, they're everywhere. Those Asian crabs,
And they're the perfect bait
and they're
size
perfect
too, man.
bait
That's
size,
that big.
you know. So you can go and get, you know, a couple handfuls of them, but that's more for shallow water and for smaller fish, right? For the bigger fish, I can't even tell you a time where I heard of a really big fish being caught in a blue claw. Of course, they have been, but the main thing is the white crab.
Now, are hermit crabs allowed on PhishPhinders trips? I know they're kind of a polarizing
I'm not
crab.
a fan of them because they tend to bring everything else. You know, if you're fishing on a early in the season, they'll bring the sea bass, they'll bring the scup. You know, the dogfish.
Really?
Yeah, the dogfish will find them because they're soft baits. You know, everything loves a hermit crab. I've never seen a really big fish caught in a hermit crab. Guys have said it. They said, you know, years ago it was way to go. It's too much work.
Oh, you got to hammer them, get the towel over
You get
them,
one shot, right? And it almost kind of changes the way your cadence. You know, when you're talking, you're locked in. You're waiting for that right bite. When you're using a hermit crab, it's like putting a worm on a hook. That fish is gonna come. He's gonna give you a good yank, and it may change it. You might be swinging at nothing, or maybe swinging at the one. So, can you use them on our trips? We rather you not. But hey, I don't control what guys do. Most guys would rather not use hermit crabs, and they're expensive now too. You got to bring a hammer. You have to make sure you don't mess up the captain's boat. Yeah, it becomes a whole to do. It definitely does.
I've been out on, I guess it was the Seagart Reef, and you could hear, you knew which boats were using the hermit crabs because you'd hear whack, 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 whack. You know,
and it's a mess everywhere. Oh my! And the captain's yelling like, "Keep it in one spot. Watch where it's going." So yeah.
So you have your own boat. What kind of fishing do you do? I know you did some tuna fishing last year.
So I did do some tuna fishing. I was lucky enough, some of my guys in my circle kind of coached me into what to do. And we went out and we had an extremely good Western Long Island bite with those tuna. It was amazing. They were so, I mean, I was untying and pushing off from my dock and on the fish in 20 minutes sometimes. And so that's something you hear about in the islands. You hear about that up here sometimes because it was something that's more prevalent up here in the Cape area where you would get those giants or those larger fish that would come in shore.
They're a little closer, but I mean, you either have to go around Monomoy or leaving out of Pamet. You got to go around the race. To have them 20 minutes. That's close for here.
Funny enough, at one of the clubs that I'm affiliated with, Atlantis Anglers in Long Island, last night we had a meeting, and Captain Tim of the Margarita, who's a really known local guy, was saying how the word's out now, but those fish were here for years. So kudos to the guys that kept them hush hush. But once the word got out, you know, obviously everyone wanted to target them, and they weren't easy to catch. But if you could find them, you would find the fleet and you would find the fish, and you know they were targetable. And a lot of guys you heard of losing a lot of fish. But there were a lot of guys catching fish, trophy catchers.
Yeah, because these were big. This wasn't little football bluefin.
I mean, they were impressive. The one that we had was well over in his 70s. Was pushing 300 pounds. We had a couple actually over a couple weeks. Make sure you get your permits, guys. Don't go after those without your permits.
Yeah, the HMS permits. Anytime, doesn't matter whether you're close to shore or far from shore. You have to have your highly migratory species permit, and you need to report your catch too.
And report your catch, and and be respectful for the guys around you because targeting those fish are not easy. But they were there in abundance. They were, as you know, I saw them one day on the beach, literally, and those fish were hammering bunker in from the beach site, and you just know because it's a sight you never forget where you see that tuna come out the water, and it just literally, it's almost like a dolphin, but it's much more aggressive.
It's more violent.
And it's just, it's very clear because it's fat and it's a big butterball. And I remember seeing them and going like, wow. And I got to finally see one that close. And this is like summertime. And so a couple things with that. Our waters have gotten extremely more cleaner than what they've had been in the past. The regulations or how they've handled the bunker schools is huge, because having the bunker there and the bait there is a big thing for us in that area. New York Bight, Western Long Island, going into Mid-Island. That's what's kept those fish there. And I guess continuing to bring them back. And then also seeing all these other species of fish that we've had coming. We have mahi coming in that closer and closer. They were cobia on those fish. The amount of sharks that we see, I see sharks so much on my electronics when I'm just cruising around. And and you see bunker pods and you just see this big mark. And it's not always a big bluefish or a big striped bass, because that's a big shark. And sometimes you see people swimming around and they're among us.
I don't know if you've ever seen Tim Reagan, South Fork Salt, his stuff. He's got drone footage from toward the eastern end of Long Island.
I've seen that, yes.
And, he's just launching his drone off the beach. He's seeing tuna. He's seeing those big sharks. And until the last year or so, I thought the tuna were an anomaly. Like, here's one fish that got lost. Here, it's way more than that. Way more fish that are actually coming inside.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of us would think that, just one fish that got lost, or a tandem, and they were targeting them. But in actuality, it's the Rat Pack, and they're going out, and they're just literally and tuna. Let it be known, we know them as a very prestigious fish, and like they're like definitely at the top of the food chain. We give them the respect. They're gods. But they're literally garbage cans. They're incinerators. They eat everything. When you open the tuna up, he's going to have 30 bunkers, a couple bluefish, a little striped bass, fluke in them. He's going to have sea robin. They have everything in them. They're garbage cans. They literally open up and they eat whatever's around.
Whatever can outrun them, that's on the menu.
Whatever structure you find them on, especially the ling, they're gonna clean that out. Especially the ling, they love the ling on those structures, boy. Love them, and the scup, the porgies.
So what's is your boat in the water now?
Yes, my boat. So I pretty much keep my boat in the water year round, just because my son loves. On a nice day in mid-December, mid-January, he'll say, "Dad, let's go out and take the boat out." So I do a lot of charters, non-fishing. So I personally don't like to do fishing charters for me personally, because I do them so much with PhishPhinders. I do, on the money-making side, charter cruises, and which has been profitable. It's been fun. So I've been doing that over the last couple of years, using my six-pack license, and now I'm upgrading to my master captain's license. And funny enough, I have coincidentally enough, I have a 40-footer that's coming. I'll be doing cruises in the that's Coast Guard inspected. Have a COO on it for 44 people. Wow. So I'll do cruises in the Freeport, Long Island landscape. I'll be doing, which will be pretty fun. But on the fishing side of my boat, my son and I we're out on it probably a handful of times a week, whenever we can. It's summertime, so now that I'm coaching with baseball, maybe take a step back. But whatever chance we get, season-wise, we're on that boat every day if we can. If I'm not doing charters, he'll come. He's like, "Dad, I'm coming down." He's on the boat. He drives the boat. He's been in a couple publications himself where he's been behind the wheel. He loves being on the water. He loves being on behind the helm. He's a true water kid and a boatsman at the age of 8, or just turning 8. And I'm really happy that he's able to grow up, using his dad's boat, because unfortunately I didn't have that at his age. Luckily enough, when I was in high school, my dad was able to get a boat for us. But him having at such a young age, the sky's the limit with him.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah. So little Garrett's following in your footsteps with fishing and baseball.
He surely is.
That's awesome.
Sure. We have a big tournament this weekend in Perfect Game that it's my first one. It's his first one, so I'm looking forward to it.
This is your first one as a coach?
Yeah, first one as a coach.
Man.
It's a prestigious tournament, prestigious organization, Perfect Game. Gets these kids on the radar. Get them known for college scouts. It's crazy how young they start them off now.
This is starting at 8?
He's 8 years old. They have a profile for him. They know who your parents are. If you have any athletic individuals in your family to kind of make the connections. He's 8 playing 10U, so that helps because it's a 10U tournament. But I like to think God has blessed him with some ability, and he's 8 years. He's played shortstop for us. He hits 5th and 6th, so he's playing up, and he fits right in. His size, his skill. So it's a proud dad talking. But him coming from a baseball family, I think that it fits the bill with him, and he's doing exceptionally well with
awesome,
it right
man.
now.
I met him at the Edison show, and it seemed like you were making multiple trips to the trout tank too to catch the fish. Oh yeah,
he loves that. He's an 8-year-old. He loves fishing. He loves fishing.
And again, we talked about Tog being the toughest party boat fish. Those trout at the convention centers, those are the toughest fish.
A lot of guys couldn't catch him. Little Garrett went there, and he goes, "I got one, Dad. I got one." I go, "Wow, look at this."
Dude, it could be a dry fly trout on the upper Delaware. If I get one out of the convention pools, that's a bigger deal to me. That one's seen more hooks in 30 minutes than those trout on the upper Delaware see in their whole life.
That is awesome.
Garrett, man, so what's coming up for PhishPhinders? Anything you can talk about?
So we had a shoot with Penn that went well. That they're gonna be releasing some video footage and some.
I saw the snippet, man, on your Instagram.
Pictures for that's pretty cool. Hopefully we're gonna do some stuff with Grundon. That's coming up. We have a full roster of trips starting tomorrow. I have one we're doing with BJ. Next week we have a couple with BJ and Captain Baker locally. We'll be doing a lot of stuff in Long Island this year with the guys in the Montauk and Peconic and North Shore area. As always, we're loaded with TOG dates come the fall into the winter. So, and we're gonna also be opening up some other stuff, maybe going a little further south into North Carolina and South Carolina and doing some of those offshore trips. Guys had interest in it, so I'm starting to kind of get the feel for it, reach out to those guys, maybe get some red snapper mixed in and get some of those trips. But it's going to be it's a full roster, of course, and the biggest, attraction is summertime, the Nantucket Fluke. And we have, our guy we fish with, Captain Gordy, and our good friend, Corey, Captain Corey, who's Gordy's, I guess, understudy. And we'll be fishing with them quite a lot. It's gonna be fun summer, real fun summer. A couple times we're gonna trail our boats out there as well, and try it out ourselves, and then we'll be out with those guys. So it's gonna be a tremendously fun summer. I can't wait. The Nantucket brings us a different type of joy, right? Because it's the ride to the grounds, the long days, but it's so worth it because it's just. It's a whole process, but it's worth it.
It's nowhere like it, man. And you could draw. I mean, you were running 20 minutes for tuna. You're going to run 3 hours for fluke.
At least. Sometimes 4.5 hours, depending when you're running. But, it was a time where I swore that you were only catching sharks. You would catch fluke, dogfish, and then sharks, whether it be threshers or makos. That was in the shoals. Now it seems like there's a mixture. I've seen bass get caught. I've seen blues. It's weird. And I don't know and we're fishing the same grounds, but I guess year to year things change. Hopefully we can protect that fishery as well because it's kind of gone. It's up and down. The last couple of years have definitely been less of an excitement than they have been in past years. Like every good thing, you have your peaks. So hopefully they can rebound. Spoke to Captain Gordy yesterday. He said that they've never seen the amount of bunker that's there this year. That's a plus. He said he's never seen the amount of bunker. He said bunker schools everywhere, squid schools everywhere, bunker schools everywhere. That's a plus this time of year.
Oh yeah, that much bait, man, this early.
Because I'll be with him in a couple of weeks, for my 40th birthday. I'll be with them in a couple weeks.
Oh, good for you, man.
Yeah, so looking forward to that.
You ever hear of cultivator shoal?
Yes.
I want to try. It's supposed to be. It's like the next Nantucket shoal. Not really. We were talking to Captain Jeff Fee and Mari about it.
It may be. It may be.
It's a lot longer run.
Yeah.
It's longer than Nantucket shoals. But supposedly, what I always heard about that from the guys on the Viking out of Montauk, they're like, what you might see a halibut mixed in with the fluke out there, and that's what always kind of. You're always looking for greener grass.
So Corey got one last year. Corey got a 75-pounder mixed in, and
wait, while fluke fishing?
While fluke fishing,
really?
Corey got one. So Jeff has gotten several. Yeah. Gordy's never gotten one, and I'm sure a couple of the guys have gotten, but Corey had his first, and they were fluke fishing, and he took a big bait. And it was usually early in the year. We're still kind of cold. Yeah. And luckily, the guy had heavy enough top shot and heavy enough, tackle. Because a lot of us sometimes when we're bucktailing, we're using 20-pound fluoro to a 30-pound fluoro. That's a tough fight or a tough battle to go against a 70-pound halibut with that light stuff. Because, you're tackling these fluke. You can get a world-class fluke up with that stuff. A 75-pound halibut, different story now.
Oh, yeah. Right?
Because now it's kind of like bringing a knife to a gunfight. But he got one. I want to say the fish ate he believes that the fish ate a small fluke because the guy said he hooked the fish and he was bringing it up and then the halibut came up pretty high off the bottom and then he swallowed it, which the halibut do that. They swallow this little baby fluke. So that's what he believes happens because he didn't think that the fish hit a big bait. So yeah, that is wild. I dream for one. A northern halibut, I dream for one.
I want a halibut. I want an Atlantic halibut on this side of the Atlantic. Like you could go to Norway and catch one. Wouldn't be it's like a 17-pound Long Island tog. Like I want it in my home waters, dude. Like in Jersey, I want a red drum in New Jersey. I would like a Jersey cobia because those are my home waters. I grew up fishing down there. Dude, there's more every year.
Yeah, I want a Long Island cobia bad. So I tell a story. I had the state record sheephead at my boat 2 summers ago. I had some intel that there was some sheephead at this one spot. So I go there for a couple days, nothing. And we don't really fish for sheephead in New York. So understanding them is something that I don't know. I don't know the bite. I never caught one, but YouTube. So we watched YouTube. I talked to some guys, and some guys were saying no wind, no tide. Some guys were saying, chum firm, a little bit of tide. So I'm there, couple small tog mixed in, fishing structure, couple small tog, couple small, everything. And then one day, after days of fishing for him with nothing, I would give a couple hours. This thing picks up and walks away with the jig. And I hit him. And he goes into the pylons. Luckily, I was spot locked on my boat. I follow it with the remote control. I get to the pylon, I get him out, and I'm backing up the boat up I have the rod in one hand, remote control in the other, and I'm able to control it, thank God, with the spot lock. And I got this fish, I see him, and I go, holy shit. I'm by myself in the boat, fishing too. And a guy's next to me, and they're watching me, and I see him with the binoculars out. And I see it once, then I see it again, I go, this is it. This thing was huge. And I finally saw one get caught. And I thought this fish was 20 plus pounds. This fish was huge. And I grabbed the net and he spits the hook.
Oh.
And I know we all have these stories. And you go, I saw the fish. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it up. The next day, the state record sheephead for New York State was caught in that same spot.
That
the
hurts,
next
man.
day. Whether it was the same fish, whether it was a different fish, but the next day, the state record was caught. And I had a horse. Oh, man. My first one, the fight, I thought it was a big striped bass. I go, it's a nice striped bass. I'm like, you hear about striped bass taking crabs.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dude, Sheepshead Bay was called I assume it was called that for the fish.
that's the reason why. Sheepshead Bay, because it was literally inundated with sheephead. And this is going back to the 50s, 60s, 70s. And then like anything else, like the way the mackerel and the Lafayettes just disappeared. Gone. You know what I mean? There used to be ling in the bay. There used to be mackerel. There used to be what's another
Dude,
species?
the whiting, the silver hake, like that would be a surf
The
fishery.
old timers talk about the whiting fishery in New York Bight, and they say it was unbelievable. They would come home with garbage bags full. I mean, like they talk about it, and they say, and also too, whiting not only is a good table fare for us, everything loves eating whiting.
Stripers love eating
They
them.
love it.
So, fun fact about whiting: the pencil popper, you ever fish a pencil popper for stripers? That action, Stan Gibbs designed it to look like a fleeing whiting, because if you ever like watch, you don't see it very often, but I've caught them and let them go and seen them do this. They do this kind of like weird tail walking across the surface. So they were such a prevalent bait in the Cape Cod Canal, which were Stan Gibbs' testing grounds for all his plugs. He came back from World War II. I might have my history a little bit wrong, but I believe he started his plug designing after World War II in the canal, and the pencil popper designed to imitate a whiting. Everybody thinks bunker, but yeah, whiting, they were so abundant at one time that in the winter they would call them frost fish because they'd be chasing bait up into the shallows, get washed up onto the beach, they'd freeze solid on the cold nights. People would just go pick them up in the surf.
Look at that.
And that's a fishery that generations of anglers now, there's few guys that remember that, can tell you stories about the whiting. It's the shifting baselines of that, man. You just hope some of it's going to come back at some point.
So getting back to what I was saying before about how clean the water is, we're hoping that we're kind of like approaching that era again, where at least for a small window, we see that. Because having the water as clean as it is and having the bait that's there, the numbers of weak fish we're seeing, and these fish that literally only encompass clean waters is huge for us, right? Even though tuna, they garbage cans. You don't really find tuna in much dirty water. They're not going to be in like a dump, whatever country it is that has them. When the water gets dirty, the tuna disappear. When the water gets real dirty.
Yeah, they don't like that dirty,
exactly.
like that Green Bay water. They don't like as much.
Like you may catch them in places where they don't have the best visual or like the clarity is not as great. Not everywhere is the canyons crystal clear, but having clean water is important. So hopefully we're approaching that again, where we're having these times where where the water is just so clean that we have all these species coming back, and once we get that, again, even if we have a 2-year window, again, last summer was one of those summers where you go, wow, because we had so many different species, and it usually comes in those shots, right? 3 to 5, hopefully 7 years, where you see them in a row. Something crazy happens, an oil spill or whatever, and it kind of shocks the environment. But hopefully we see that, right? I would love to see a whiting run. Oh my God, I would love to see a whiting run, and love to see I used to catch off the Marine Parkway Bridge as a kid, the winter flounder.
Oh,
to see that again, wow,
Dude, I was never able to. I would try for them in Jersey, and I fished South Jersey, which was the limit of their range. But up here, we have them, but it's a different fishery. It's not a backwater fishery with chum. We're fishing them in Cape Cod Bay, 40 to 50 feet of water. Yeah. Big, beautiful winter flounder.
Beautiful, you guys get them.
Dude, they're so delicious. So much better eating than fluke.
Oh my God, they're so. Listen, they fight. They surprise you when you catch them, especially in that deep water. It's a different fight. I used to get them in 20 feet of water off the bridge, and we would chum for them. I talked to an old timer a couple weeks ago, 20-pound Bob, who has
his name?
6 20-pounders.
Wow.
Yeah, and he had 2 in one day. And 20-pound Bob was saying how in the Freeport area they used to take little dinghies and literally, whether off the dock or little dinghies, and go and pound the bottom, chum, and get these beautiful, nice winter flounder. Never again.
It's a fishery there's a lot of nostalgia. Like you talk to people on Long Island, and that was where their fishery started. Around St. Patrick's Day, back when it was open then, is you would go out, you would get your sea worms or your mussels, and you would catch your winter flounder. And it's another one that's been tough to watch kind of fade away. I mean, a lot of guys say now you've got a 2-fish limit. A lot of guys say, why even bother? But, if you can find them and get out there, it's fun to do.
I haven't caught one in decades. I haven't caught one. Literally. I haven't caught one in decades. Would love to find one, though. I want to come up here and fish from one in your guys' fishery. I haven't yet.
It's good.
I'm going to make a note of that. That's something that we have to do ASAP, actually. ASAP.
It's happening now, man.
I'm gonna reach out to that one captain, Jeff. I'm gonna reach out to him ASAP. I'm glad you mentioned that. Something that's been on my radar.
Garrett, so I've noticed the baseball while we've been talking. Tell me, what's the significance of it?
So the baseball is a conversation starter, right? It's been something that's symbolic to me. It means a lot to me. Growing up in Brooklyn, I'm not the biggest guy. I'm 5'11", 210 pounds now. I pride myself the fact that I played, collegiate and professional baseball. But this baseball right here, or baseballs, has given me everything I've gotten in life, and it just means a lot to me. One of the first things my son the first toy he ever played with was a baseball I put in his hand, instead of a toy that he can suck on or something like that. The baseball has given me opportunities that some people only dream about, whether it be playing at a prestigious high school and getting an opportunity, playing for the great Bobby Napple at Canarsie High School, me getting my college scholarship to play at Seton Hall in the Big East, and then finishing my college tenure and at the place that my true alma mater, Delaware State University, HBCU, and then playing professional baseball. Again, it's every level of life, it's created for me, even into transitioning into my professional career, where an individual that I played collegiate baseball with gave me a call and said, "Hey, I'm working in this industry, it's medical device. I think your education and your personality fits well. We're interviewing. Do you want to interview?" I just gotten home. I didn't realize, I didn't know what I wanted to do yet in life. I knew living in New York, I wanted to make lucrative money, to have a big house one day. And, as we all want to do in our respective areas we live in. And I went and interviewed, and I got the job on the spot. So it's just stories like that really kind of resonate to people. And a lot of times I don't realize I have it on me. But the foundation of that is, I'm a young kid. I was a young kid that was, the oldest son of two immigrants, my mom being from Costa Rica, my dad being from Honduras. And like a lot of people in America, we come here for greater opportunity, and they created opportunity. And I was lucky enough to further that opportunity and take advantage of it through this little object right here. And that's why it means so much to me. And so it's in my car. Again, not this baseball. It just happens to be a Major League Baseball that we got at a game that I took my son to a couple of weeks ago.
Was it a Mets game?
It was a Mets game.
I'm
wearing my Mets. Let's go Mets wrist.
I'd have more to say about that if Mets weren't in first place and the Phillies weren't toward the bottom. But maybe by the time this airs, that'll change a little bit.
We've become Met fans by default because of where we live in Western Long Island, and the fact that we love the stadium way more than the Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium is in the Bronx, but like I said, the baseball. Everything that I believe and I've brought to PhishPhinders is parallel with what baseball, provides in the world, in lives, giving opportunity to individuals that may not have that opportunity. So it's parallel mindsets. And this baseball, again, means the world to me. And the main thing is symbolic. And that's why I always have it with me.
Well, Garrett, how can we find you? Find you at PhishPhinders on Instagram. Is there a website?
PhishPhinders on Instagram. At PhishPhinders on Facebook. The PhishPhinder website. So all the paraphernalia that I wear, PhishPhinders is spelled with a PH, fish with a PH, and finders with a PH. The website, PhishPhinders.com, will be loading shortly after this. So in about a week or two. I wanted to launch my 40th birthday. That was my goal. So it'll be launching, and it'll have everything, our mission statement and everything that's inclusive with PhishPhinders.
Yeah. So how would somebody interested in PhishPhinders, how would we get involved? Do we reach out to you through Instagram?
So as simple as it is, it's just I'm approachable. I literally get DMs from people. Hey, I love what you're doing. I love to fish, and I literally just incorporate them and bring them into a trip. I ask them what they want to fish for, what's their availability. A lot of us, we joke around and say the best fishing is during the week because the weekend warriors come out on the weekend. We've implemented, so I have trips with my good friend Neil out Divided Sky out in Montauk. We're doing some weekend trips with him this year. He has a new boat, so go and support Neil. But most of our trips are during the week again, so just to avoid the craziness that goes on in a lot of these places, whether it be Cape Cod, whether it be Montauk, Long Island, Brooklyn, Jersey. It gets crazy with all these boats, seeing 300 boats on the spot sometimes. So we do a lot of fishing in the week, and we tend to have really good fishing during the week because we're kind of ducking, the crowds of people. But you can reach out to me anytime. Again, this is when I say that the business of PhishPhinders is humbling, and we are humble. That's what we do. I want to create opportunity for a guy that doesn't have, have it at his fingertips, and he can say, hey, hey Garrett, I would love to catch a trophy tog, and if I can get you on a trip, that'd be great. A lot of the trips that we do also in the summertime are these large party boat trips into the fall where we get 30, 35 guys together. And that's what I call it matchmaking, where, you might meet someone, you're a Jersey guy, and he lives in Maryland, and you wanted to do some cobia fishing in Maryland. And we create those links. And I was talking to my uncle the other day saying it's amazing to see on my timeline on Facebook or my timeline on Instagram and see the amount of connections I've made over the years. Guys mentioning other guys fishing together, and they've all come from us, right? So, if you're a big party boat guy, or if you have that platform where everybody comes and meets on your party boat, but to have, or a club that does that, but to have the simple nonprofit where we just bring people together. And that's what I care about, to see those guys connecting.
That's when you've made a community. When you see people connecting who met through PhishPhinders, but connecting outside of it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So, and you've done a great job with it. It's been awesome to follow along. I can't wait to see.
I appreciate it.
Where it goes, man. I can't wait to get back. I need to redeem myself on a tog trip, on a head
That
boat
was
trip.
that was a tough day.
But
that was a tough day.
But keepers were caught, man. Good fish were caught. I did manage one keeper, but
we're gonna get you on something special where you can really show what you could do. Get you on something special.
Garrett, man, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me out. Really, really.